Welcome to today's live. My name is Lily and I'm the CEO of Mirage Consulting. And I'm really happy that you are all joining. So we will wait a few seconds before we start with our talk of this week. As you know, every Wednesday, 6:30 Central European time, it's time for a live with me and some guests. So I help decision makers to develop their B2B business in the food and beverage industry with the help of LinkedIn. Business development and leadership, of course, are the game changers and require a real concrete approach. And many B2B businesses, they shy away to get a consultant on board. I know, I have been there as well. So working in a corporate and having consultants around, it's always like a bad feeling. That's why I'm providing fair and implementable and customized solutions for your challenge. So I would really love to know from which industries you guys are who are joining this live today. So just write it in the chat so that we can see and also maybe address during our talk today some of those industries as well. In my 10 plus years in the corporate world in the food and beverage industry, I love to approach and talk about topics which drive you as a decision maker and business owner within this industry. And one of the main topics driving industries and organizations is human resources and how to get the right talents, and more important, how to hold them and make sure that employees have a great experience when working for the company. As this is a really very timely topic, I have the honor to discuss this topic together with an absolute pro on this area. And my guest today is Arte Nathan. Arte served as a Chief Human Resource Officer for Mirage Resorts and Wynn Resorts for over 20 years. So we all know the casinos in Vegas. So when hearing Mirage, everybody has an idea of what we talk about. And in his time, he opened and helped operate all of their casinos in the US. So the famous one in Atlantic City, Las Vegas, Mississippi, and in China. And throughout his career, Arte oversaw all aspects of human resource. So including employment, compensation, training and development, workplace safety, labor and employee relations, employee communications, and human resource information systems and employee engagement. So the whole circle of HR work. At the time being, Arte was also teaching at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas for 3 years, and he currently serves on the board of several hospitality companies, writes and serves as president of Strategies Development Worldwide, a global human capital management consultancy, so SDW. He has been the recipient of many awards for his work in human resources, community affairs and education, and including the Award for Professional Excellence from the Society for Human Resource Management. And this is really impressive, and I'm really honored that Arte is joining me today to our talk. So Arte, welcome. Good evening from here, good morning to you. I think your mic is not on. So, the technical challenges. So Arte will be back any minute. And so let me introduce to you the topic of today. So we will talk about employee experience. So all of us, we have employees with us or have been employees ourselves. And here the question is, how was our experience in this during this time. So being in the company, or also being in the onboarding process. So customer experience is like the whole picture, the whole setup, and it shows how the company is valuing their employees as well. And because employees want to be treated as customers. Yeah, so remember, so I remember my time in the corporate world and being an employee myself. So for me, it was really important to have a reliable company who is supporting me, who is helping me with my projects, who is empowering me, and who is also giving me kind of responsibilities to be able to handle this. And so the customer or the employee experience, so we all know the customer circle, we know the customer experience, and the employee experience can be compared. Yeah? So this can be compared together, because when you offer an amazing opportunity or an amazing employee experience, the people you want to hire will want to be part of your business, to want to be part of your organization. So those of you who are joining us here live, please share your experience, or how are you treated in your company, or what is your experience at your employer, or maybe former employer, or if you are a business owner, how do you implement customer employee experience? So you see, I'm so customer driven. How do you implement employee experience in your companies? So let me see, Artie is back.
Ooh.
Yes. Welcome. Good morning to you. It's too early. What time is it at your end at the moment? It's like
9:30. It's late enough that I shouldn't be having trouble, but oh well, that happens.
It happens. So happy that you rejoined. And yes, so I just was talking to the audience and also saying or explaining a little bit our topic of today. So we will talk about the employee experience and what companies can do, but also what employees can do to have or to make sure that employee has a great experience. And here we are coming to my first question to you, Artie. So having this huge experience in the human resource area, so you know it all, yeah? So employee experience. So how to create this employee experience? And because a lot of people saying employee experience, isn't it the same like employee engagement? So is there any difference?
Well, I spent a dozen years running a manufacturing company before I went into the hospitality world. And I spent 30 years in hospitality. And both are about the same. They're employees, and people have expectations. You know, people, they shop a lot of places, they eat out a lot of places, they have a lot of experience as consumers. And you have to respect that and understand the kinds of things that they can find in other places, other websites, other restaurants, other hotels. And you want to make sure that you don't disappoint them when they're coming to your facility or your website. So you have to put yourself in their shoes. And really, you have to remember that you only have one chance to make a good first impression. And it starts with your website, it starts with your job postings, and it's how you respond to them when they do contact you. And remember that when you bring somebody in for an interview, they're interviewing you as much as you're interviewing them. And when they go, when they go home later that day or that evening, someone in their family is going to say, "How was it?" And that first impression will tell them a lot about you and your company. And you have to be concerned about that. And so when you interview them, when you make them a job offer, and when you bring them back for onboarding, all of those things are important to create the impression in their mind that you got it together, you know what you're doing, and this is a good place to work. And so you better prepare your managers, you better train your managers on meeting expectations and functioning in a role that you think will put your best foot forward.
Mm-hmm. And so when we say employee experience compared to employee engagement, so where is the difference? What is the difference between experience and engagement? Because a lot of people were asking me before this talk, well, isn't that the same?
An experience is an impression. They are the same, Lily. And you want to make sure that you treat others the way you want them to treat you. And again, you probably have expectations and hopes when you meet people or go to a new place or take a new job. And so when you put yourself in somebody's shoes like that, you start to create the right experience. And that experience starts on day one and it never ends because, you're making a good first impression all the time. And when you make a bad impression, when they have a bad day, when something doesn't work right, your job as a company, as a manager, is to fix it and to make sure that their world is perfect for them to do the things that you need them to do to be effective. And, you also have to think about your policies and your procedures. Go back and look at your handbook and make sure that you have policies that are people friendly, not necessarily only company friendly. We all write policies and handbooks as though the company were really important. But what we're finding in the workplace and in the job market is that people have a lot of choices. And if you're not the best choice, they may not stay with you and you'll have a lot invested with them. So you want to make sure that every day in every way that you make sure that they're having a good experience. Do you teach your managers how to be good coaches and good mentors? Do you teach them how to be servant leaders? Do you teach them how to be effective communicators? Those are the kinds of soft skills that managers need to meet the needs of their employees every day.
I think this is a really important point, and also Mikey is saying great insight about also potential employee is interviewing their potential employer too. So this is a really good view on this. So I remember when I was interviewing candidates for different jobs internationally, then of course they have the same questions and they ask, how do you work? What are the hours? What are the expectations? What are the rules? So that's a really great point to say. And so mentioning that companies has to coach their people, so their managers, or to give them the soft skills. From your experience, is the majority of companies doing that, or is it more seldom that they are empowering their managers in that soft skill direction?
Well, they'd like to do it, I'm sure. But how you do something is usually pretty complicated. And so you need advice and guidance on how to create an employee-friendly workplace. Lily, you and I have talked with Dr. Fadil Tadaku in Zurich about emotional intelligence. And during this past year with the pandemic, managers have had to be especially empathetic and overly concerned about the well-being of their employees. I'm sure they'd like to, but it's up to you as a company and a leader to guide them, to coach them, to help them understand the basics of those soft skill strategies. And when you do, they'll pick up on it pretty quickly. And if you practice the same skills, then they will take your lead and do the same. Role modeling in this case is very important. But I'm not sure we can leave this to employees and managers. I think we have to be very overt in explaining what we want and how to do it.
And also talking about it, so what should or could companies start doing to improve their employee experience process? So maybe some listeners are realizing right now, business owners are realizing right now, employee experience, I am not pretty sure if I have it already in place. So what could be the first steps or indicators for starters, or for those who have already established employee experience systems or strategies? What could or should they do to improve it?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is take a look at your practices and at your policies. And if you're open at that, you'll be able to see whether you're doing it. In many cases, people hire consultants like Lily or myself or others who can come in and do a quick audit and give you some advice on what you have and how to maybe close the gap between that and what you like. I think it starts with making sure that your managers and supervisors are well trained in the skills that you want them to have. I'm sure most of them are technically competent. That's why you hire them. But if they're not good people managers, then they're not going to get the most out of their people, and their people are not going to be as effective as they need to be in terms of performance and other things. And so I think you want to go back and look at your training program. And there are all kinds of programs today that are online, that are both short and long, and give companies a lot of guidance on how to help managers and supervisors be as effective as they need to be. I think today, given what happened this past year, emotional intelligence and servant leadership are two soft skills that are so critically important. And they're usually not the ones that companies have in their supervisory training courses. And so I would go look for some courses on those topics. And if you can get managers understanding that they're really serving their employees, they're satisfying their employees' needs, then you will have a company that is probably better at retaining those people than not. And then, on the other side, Lily, people ask me, well, what should employees be doing? And how can they do? Well, you've got to have programs that get employees engaged, which means your managers have to be comfortable with these topics and these strategies, and they have to guide people and support them being engaged. Catch people doing things right when they are engaged and celebrate those things and coach them if they're a little shy. I think you want to have a culture in your company where employees can ask questions. And it sounds simple, but a lot of companies don't really encourage questions. They tell employees what to do and they expect employees to do it. But employees are adult learners, and they really need to understand why something is being requested or being suggested. And when you give them that context, then those answers to their questions will be exercised. And then, like anything else in life or in work, you want to treat others the way you want to be treated. So put yourself in their shoes. And remember, you were a line employee at one time. You know what you liked and what you didn't like. And so recall all the things that your bosses used to do that you couldn't stand. And just don't do things,
Don't forget it, right?
Your managers would do. Well, remember those and be sure you do those.
Yeah, but we have also right now talked a lot about what managers and companies can do. But you know me that I'm always like for taking it in your own hands. So what can I, as an employee, improve? How can I improve my work experience? So I cannot go to my work and say, well, manager, company, do something that I feel good. So I'm also responsible for my feeling good and contributing to the success of my job as well.
And like I said when I started, we are all consumers. We buy stuff, we experience stuff, and we see stuff that we like. It's like a website or a phone call that you make to a company. If all you get is a recording and all you get is call back later, we're short-staffed because of COVID, that's not a good experience. And so, again, think about what you like. Think about the experiences that you've had that were good and try to emulate those. And the ones that aren't so good, well, try to stop those in your organization and never stop auditing your own organization, because sometimes what you think is happening may not be happening. And so you have to go back in as a leader, as a supervisor, and watch employees do what they do. Listen to them, watch their interactions with customers, and make sure that you read all the feedback that you get from customers so that you're managing the tempo and the culture in your company appropriately.
And would you say that from your point of view, money is the main motivation for a positive employee experience?
I think it's about 50-50. It's not as good as it should be. And that's because, well, today we're doing more with less because of COVID. We have budgets that we think are more important than service sometimes. And so I don't think it's as good in general as it should be. And it's not costly to do it right. It takes, again, emotional intelligence and understanding supervision to help people to do things right. And when they do, like I said, catch them, celebrate them, let them know how appreciative you are of what they're doing. And if it's a little off, which it may be, coach them. Don't discipline them. Oftentimes we write somebody up for doing something wrong, but that's a wonderful opportunity to coach somebody and to get them back on track. I think that's the job of a supervisor, and it's not an easy one. And most supervisors don't have a lot of training when they start. And so it's up to a company to pay attention to that and provide those things that they need, as we say, to be effective.
So would you say that companies should also more invest into internal coaching, so also coaching of not only the management level, but also coaching the employees so that they feel safe and that have an open space and that they can also develop themselves and work towards their goals as well?
I would add to that, and that's very correct. I would add to that companies have to invest in communications. Most companies spend a lot of time and money on external communications and public relations. But if they're not spending that same energy internally, then employees are going to be confused and maybe less satisfied. My old boss used to say that employee satisfaction drives customer satisfaction, and both of those equal profitability. And so you've got to make sure that you spend a lot of time and energy and money on employee satisfaction. And when I say money, it's not a lot of money, because you're spending a lot of money now. Just spend it the right way. You're spending a lot of time now. Just spend it the right way. And there's no shame if you're not doing it as well as you could, because like anything else, driving a car, flying a plane, making a meal, you got to learn those things. And there's so much in the way of best practices out there. That's what the internet is so good for. You find programs like this, you see things that people have written, and there's so many ways to educate yourself. And continuous learning is so important for leaders and for their supervisors. So as a leader, promote that idea.
We have also a question coming up, which I think is really good. So the question from Mike is, how can companies learn what the motivational factors are? Ask them, survey them. I was, for example, most happy when I could travel the world and meet international subsidiaries. That's not typical for all employees.
Was the question, how can they learn about these things?
So how can companies learn what the motivational factors of their employees are? So just ask them, or is the survey a good idea, or make kind of an assessment?
Well, yes, there are assessments, formal assessments that my firm does and a lot of firms do, but there's nothing better than asking people. And it's funny how many companies think they have to do a formal employee attitude survey or culture survey to find out what their employees think. But if you just sit down with your employees and ask them, how's it going? What's good here? What could we improve? And my company does a lot of employee surveys because others think that's necessary. And in just about every one, people say communications here in my company are not as good as they could be. And what they mean is, nobody tells me anything. How come I'm the last to know? Why don't they share things with me, or why don't they listen to me? You don't need a formal program to do that. Years ago, it was management by walking around. Just walk up to employees and tell them you appreciate them and ask them how it's going. What do they think? How can we be better? And they'll be proud to tell you. No employee ever complained about being able to do more or being able to get more. And your job is to open up those gates so that they feel like they can. People often ask me for career advice. What should I do? What should I think of next? And I always tell them that the best job for you is most often the one you have. And the challenge
Mm,
is to make it the one you like. And if you make the
mm.
job you have the one you love, your boss won't complain. Your boss won't try to stop you because your performance and your attitude will just skyrocket. And that's what everybody hopes to see when they're supervising employees.
Wow, that's a really great thought. And I think also our audience can rely to it. So drop a comment in here as well. So, do you like your current job? Do you love your current job? Or is it a matter of kind of mindset? So drop in the comments. We will be happy to show it as well. And Adi, I'm convinced that we need more entrepreneurship within companies. So having entrepreneurs in the company. Then, if every employee has this mindset and also the work ethic, the question of bad experience would not pop up. Or what do you say?
Well, entrepreneurship, like uh, suggestion programs, are wonderful, but you have to ask sincerely for people to give you their ideas and their thoughts. And you have to act like you think it's great or you're interested or you want to know more. More often than not, we ask somebody for something, and when they come to us, we say, "Well, we're busy. Excuse me. Can we do this at another time?" And entrepreneurs, like entrepreneurs, need a lot of nurturing. And telling them to
Mhm.
wait is not a good way to nurture them. And so, managers, again, when I talked about servant leadership, this is one of the key elements. When I talked about communications and the importance of listening, active listening, very important because you can inadvertently, with your body language or just an off comment,
Mm.
you can shut somebody right down. Someone who's got a great idea, someone that's really interested in helping you and your company to be better. And employees, the ones doing the job, are the ones that really understand it the best. They know the most about how to do it effectively. They know the most about customers and their preferences and their reactions. And so if you're not listening to those things, you're going to miss a lot of how you could be better as a company. Your products could be better. Your service could be better. So important. And managers have to forget that there's a hierarchy. You almost have to turn
Mm.
it around, invert it. And that's what servant leadership is really all about. And I think if you do that right, people respond very well. They love that.
Mm, mm. Yeah, also we see it. So one of our main pillars within consulting companies is really taking the knowledge which is already in the company and listening to the employees. Because also from our own experience, when we've been working for our former employer, the knowledge, the strategies, the ideas, they are already in the company. But the main problem is that leaders are not listening to the employees. They are bringing in external consultants, and the consultants just repeat what the employees were saying all the time in another way. Yeah. And so one of our main things is really to involve the employees or to involve the team or the department where the challenge is occurring, and also address it to them openly. Say, okay, guys, you have the solution maybe already there. Let's just bring it on paper and we will speak in your voice towards your management. And then we also indicate it in the management as well and saying, well, your department has already the solution there. We just kind of supported or framed it or brought it in a implementable strategy as well.
Well, this stuff isn't rocket science, Lily. If it was, you and I could charge a lot more for our advice. But
Sure.
it's unbelievable that companies just miss this stuff. And it's because I guess they get busy, they get confused as to what's really important. But customers and employees are the most important things you have. You spend the most on acquiring and retaining and getting the loyalty of both of those groups. And you don't want to, waste that money and that time by not listening well, by not showing that you care, um, by just acting like a boss rather than a concerned person. Yeah,
Mm.
I find it to be fascinating when you get out there and you're doing this stuff and you can see it in the eyes of your employees. In my professional career, I had 50,000 employees. service employees. And the fact of the matter is, you can't, as a supervisor, get between your employee and a customer at that moment of service, that moment of truth. And so if you haven't inspired that employee, if you haven't shown them and coached them and trained them how to be just as effective as they can be at that one moment, then you're missing an opportunity. And every one of those missed opportunities doesn't do your business any good.
That's for sure. But Ati, talking about your years of experience in the HR field, so what was your biggest challenge? So if you look back, what was your biggest challenge, or maybe like a complicated case, or which you want to share with us?
Well, I think the biggest challenge was making sure that you hire the right people. Because if you start with the right people, you can put your energy and your efforts into them and make them as great as they can be. But if they're not the right person, and when I say that, people say to me, well, what's the right person? And I say, it's not a wealth of experience. It's an attitude. It's something that they have within them. And we describe that as general optimism, someone who is open and flexible and willing and interested in learning new things. When you hire bad attitudes, you hire bad habits. And it's almost impossible to fix those things. But if you hire a good attitude and then train for skills, the skills and the capabilities that you need, I think that is a good formula. And it took me a long time to learn that, Lily. But once I did, my turnover went down immeasurably. And when I talk to companies about this, they're not sure if it'll work. But, if people are retained appropriately, if they stay around with you, they learn more about you and your policy, culture, and your customers and your products. And then they can be entrepreneurs because they have the competence as well as the confidence to do the best job possible and to make good recommendations to you and to help your company be better. So I learned early on that hiring for attitude is so critically important. And if you don't do that, if you don't start with the right person in the job that you need to fill, it's probably not going to go as well as you need.
And Ati, so some companies are also approaching us, or when we are doing LinkedIn training within the companies, a lot of managers are afraid that their employees will leave them because they have a great LinkedIn profile. But we are always saying, so this is also my value when talking about employees, is better I take a person who is working for my company like for half a year, 180%, than a person who is working for my company for 10 years, but only 20%. So from energy and from passion and from just being present and wanting to be part of the success of the company. Would you agree with that? So better to hire someone and really make use of the short time instead of looking for someone for a long time, but this person is not really motivated?
You always want to hire or promote the person with a can-do attitude, the person that comes to work every day with a smile and a willingness to do what it takes to get the job done. And whether they've been there a week or 10 years, those are the people you want to hire. And, oftentimes we get fixated on external candidates, like, oh, they better, or they're coming from a company that I really like. If they're coming to you from a company that you really like, maybe they don't. And maybe that's why they're coming. And so you got to think about that. And so I think you've got to look for the right attitudes. And the right attitudes create the right performance. And that's so critically important. And again, the behaviors you want to support and pay attention to are the ones that you most appreciate. Here in America, I think one of the biggest problems is attendance. People don't come to work, or it's a problem, and that's the number one cause of people getting terminated here in America. And so I just say, well, look, if somebody comes to work, how do you celebrate that? How do you value that? If they have perfect attendance, do you reward that? or do you just discipline them when they have bad attendance or tardiness? So you've got to send the right messages. And being a boss, and being a leader in a company has a lot to do with psychology. Oftentimes, my partner in consulting is a clinical psychologist, and we think about what motivates people, what drives them, why do they think they want or should want to do things. And you as a leader have to understand those ways to reinforce good behavior and try to tamp down bad behavior.
And also, Don has joined us, and he's commented, CFO asks the CEO, what if we train our employees and they leave? And the CEO answered, what if we don't train them and they stay? So I think you just kind of summarized what you've been saying.
In my professional career, like I said, I had a lot of employees. I hired 125,000 employees, but my real job was retaining every one of them, making sure that they loved what they did. They loved where they did it. They loved who they worked with. It didn't matter if they loved me, but, managers have to be respected and trusted. That's important. And so all the things that they need to do to create that trust and that respect are so important for companies to understand and to reinforce. And retention, I can't say enough about it. In a industry here in America that has 50 or 60% turnover, that's the hospitality business, restaurants and hotels and casinos, we had a turnover rate of under 10% because people were treated the way they wanted to be treated, and they knew they couldn't go anywhere else and be treated better. And if you do that, people don't think so much about money. You have to pay competitively. We all know that. But if you don't treat people well, they want more money. And there's no amount of money that'll make them feel good about working for somebody that doesn't treat them well. So it's a waste of money. So I think you got to put all your energy in, like I said before, in employee satisfaction. So critical. And, companies all over the world, and I deal with them all over the world, people are people. We all are kind of wired and built the same. And those are the things we like.
And I also give the advice to my career coaches. So when they are applying for a job, I tell them, check the company values. So research on the company, and the company values has at least to match your personal values minimum at 80%. Because otherwise, in 1 year, you will be at the same situation and you will search for another job. Because a job can adapt to a person, but the culture and the values of a company, they will never change. And if they are not matching yours, then it does not make any sense. Would you agree?
I do agree. Values are so critically important, but it's more important than just having them written down in your handbook somewhere. It's important that you weave those values into everything you do. Every policy should support the value, and the value should drive the way that you act towards people. Oftentimes we write these mission statements or these value propositions and forget them. And so, when I go into a new client situation, I'll walk around and ask employees, do you know what the mission statement is? Do you know what the values are around here? And they have to be short and understandable so that people can keep them at top of mind. And if you can do that, then people will see the values, they'll feel the values, and they'll believe in the values. But if it's just written somewhere and the boss doesn't act like that, or supervisors don't reinforce that, then it's just words on a piece of paper, and you've got to flip that around. So as a leader, walk around and ask your employees, do you know what our values are? Do we live our values? Do you think we live up to our values every day? And again, in these surveys that my partner and I do, people say, no, they really don't. The words and the actions are not really connected. And, it's easy to determine if that's going on. It's hard to fix, but if you just pay attention to it and you say, okay, bring your managers and say, okay, we say we're going to be entrepreneurial. We're going to encourage creativity. How do we do that in your department, And what have you seen in terms of this? Ask them for the stories of the things that support our values. or the story that talk about we really aren't living our values. And once you hear that, again, it's not rocket science. You'll know what to do as a leader. You can fix those things. And it's just, focus on it, get people going in the right direction on it, and it'll start to improve. But again, going back and asking your employees again, are we doing better? What do you see? And that's active listening. So important.
And I think a lot of companies are missing it. So the first time I met this behavior was in the US. So when I was in the US working for a few months and establishing subsidiaries over there, and the managers, or the local managers, they went to the production staff and they were talking to them and asking them, and they were like also giving feedback. And then I realized that we are not doing this in Germany, so not in the headquarters. Because we're saying, okay, everything is clear and there is not a real communication. And when I was coming back, I was kind of addressing it in our team leader managers meeting. All the people saying, "No, you are right. I will never ask my people how they feel, what they would do better, what they think about this new tool, or about this new process, or about this new strategy." So not many kept this kind of behavior, but I think it's really important, and it is also a cultural thing. You Americans are more open, more communicating, and also more asking. Also, when looking into hospitality or being served in a restaurant or in a supermarket. So you will never have this behavior here in Germany. So if they say hello, it's quite nice, but you will never be asked, how are you? Or you have a beautiful blouse or whatever. So this is also a cultural difference. And I think also that we Europeans can learn a lot from the Americans in this kind of behavior or attitude as well.
Yeah, that's so true. Most of my career was spent here in the US, opening hotels and casinos and restaurants. And then my company said they're going to open in China, in Macau. And they sent me there. And they said, well, just, do what you do here, there. And it became clear very quickly that there are cultural differences that you have to understand and that you have to actionalize. And if you don't, even if it worked here in the US, you can't assume it was going to work in China. And in fact, it didn't. And we had to retool our thinking and all of our programs and all of our processes to take it into account, the cultural differences. And once we did, it became so much easier. But I've talked to a lot of human resource leaders around the world who do multinational work. And it's become clear to all of us that the best practice is to stop and learn the culture where you're going before you do anything. If you don't, I just think you're going to put the wrong foot forward.
And I think also it's really important when talking about employee experience within a multicultural company that the cultural aspect has also to be taken under consideration, and also look, okay, how many nationalities are within in our company and are mixed up working together, so that this employee experience is also kind of matching their requirements and their cultural setups as well.
Here in America, when you interview somebody, you jump right to it. You want the job or don't you? And in China, you spent the first meeting introducing yourself, the second meeting getting to know one another, developing a relationship, the third meeting continuing that relationship. And it wasn't until the fourth or fifth meeting that you could even talk about employment or considering leaving your company and coming to work for ours. An act over there which might cause their current employer to lose face. And I tell you, when that hit me, it was just, wow, we better slow down here. We better understand this. And whether you're operating in China or you're operating in the Middle East or you're operating in Africa or the US, they're all different. And people come with different backgrounds and experiences and cultures. And it's so important for leaders to understand that rather than just to think, well, my product or my company was successful here, it'll be successful there. It's not often the case that it's one-to-one. you got to do some adjustments.
It's never the case, and this is also why a lot of companies fail when they want to conquer a new country, a new market, and a new continent, and they think, well, we are the heroes in the country where they are, and then they do not take under consideration all the cultural, intercultural, things which you have just been talking about. Yeah.
I'll tell you,
Really, really interesting.
the other thing I've learned, Lily, is that these things have changed the world. This is how people communicate. This is how people find information. This is how people get trained. And if we don't develop the technology, the apps, the things that people use in the rest of their lives, in everything that they do, if it's not as good as that, where they're working, then they're going to look at you like, well, why not? You ought to be able to do it. Now, it's not so simple to do. I understand that. But you got to get people to do that. Otherwise, we talked about the employee experience. When I went to China, I had just finished hiring 100 or 10,000 people here in America, and they filled out applications on a desktop. And I went to China, and I thought they'd do the same, but they would only fill out applications on this. And creating a mobile app is different than creating a desktop app. And I mean, it's just, there's a lot of work to be done, but it's not rocket science. And there's so many best practices that if you just scroll around the internet, you'll find out a lot about these things. But this is the game changer in every company. How we talk to employees, how employees talk to us, how they ask for things, how we supply things. If your company doesn't have mobile apps for all of that, they're going to look at you like you're as old as I am. Like, how come you can't get this figured out? You got to do it. There's no getting around it.
Yeah, there's a lot of change going on, and also, of course, a smartphone gives a great opportunity to increase the employee experience and also get in touch with employees in another way, and also internationally. So you don't need to fly to your subsidiary and figuring out what's going on. You can also have another level of communication as well, and level of trust and different environment for giving feedbacks as well. So there's a exciting future ahead, and a lot of changes will be implemented. But at the end of the day, we are all humans, and the human interaction will always, always, always be the number one thing in between of us. So Arte, thanks so much. I have 3 questions I ask all my guests, so you can just choose one and or give an explanation. So first of all, tea or coffee?
I've never had a cup of coffee in my life.
Wow, really?
That's for it, so I've never had a cup of coffee. I make my wife coffee every morning, but I wouldn't know if it was a good cup or a bad cup usually. But no, I don't like coffee.
Wow, that's cool. And which tea? Green, black, yellow?
Well, I like red, and I dress in red all the time. Okay. And it's a bright, happy color. I also dress in black all the time too. But I got dressed up for you today.
Oh, that's really nice. Thank you. So, boss or leader?
What's a leader? A leader is someone who understands the needs of the people they are leading and creates trust and respect with them and for them. And then the people will follow them. That's so important. It's all about the people that you're coaching or leading. It's not about you.
Mm-hmm. And does employee branding work on LinkedIn? Would you say that LinkedIn is now the place to be for companies, for employees, for business owners? So is employee branding working on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is becoming a great portal and format for so many things, learning and communicating and meeting people. But I have to admit, most of my clients are afraid to have all their people on LinkedIn because they think they're going to get recruited away. That's because it's so easy to see them. But what I say to them is, look, if you create a situation that they want to be recruited away, it's not LinkedIn, it's you. So don't worry about them being on LinkedIn.
Thank you. Perfect end words, so to say. Adi, thank you so much. It was really interesting, and we also made an international switch into the employee experience. So it was really insightful. I made a lot of notes so that I can make a beautiful post out of it, and also put it in my talks with HR people and also employees. So thank you very much for sharing your bright experience, and it's really impressing what you have done in your professional life. And I'm really thankful that you took the time and was my guest today.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed this, Lily. You have a good day.
You too, Ati. Thanks so much. Bye bye. So this was our talk about employee experience, and I want to invite you to think about your employee experience. So being an employee or being the employer. So what do you think your employees are thinking about working for you? So also use all the tips Artie shared today, and also, what I will really take with me is that during an interview situation, you are also interviewed by the potential candidate as well. So keep this in mind, and every step within your company is based on the values and the culture, and especially if it is lived or not. And if you want to establish entrepreneur spirit within your company, or if you are curious about to hear what entrepreneurship is and how you can profit as a company from it, as a department from it, so get in touch with me. You have my contacts below, so get in touch and I would be happy to inform you about it, and let's have a look if we can support and help you. And I see you back next week, Wednesday, 6:30 Central European Time. So stay tuned for the topic, and let's see if I will have a guest or if it will be just me. So take care.